Chinese medicine doesn't need scientific validation to function. It already has a complete diagnostic and prescribing system that's based off pattern differentiation, formula strategy, and the lived observation of how the body responds over time. Now, but most people today want to know the facts, or what the science says in terms of immune dysregulation, oxidative stress, histamines, and skin barrier dysfunction. With keeping the Chinese medicine framework intact and using modern research as a transition layer, let's take a closer look at a key herb that's used in the treatment of eczema in Chinese medicine. Now, the key to herbal medicine is not trying to find that one herb that's going to do it all. Rather, it's important to understand the role that each herb plays in addressing the root cause, and then combining them accordingly. Now, some herbs stand out because they're trendy and trending now, and they do show lots of promise in reducing inflammation and reducing symptoms of eczema, such as the Chinese skullcap. But there are other herbs that are overlooked by the online health influencers because, frankly, they're lesser known in the Western health circles. But these herbs are equally as important because they're foundational herbs in the treatment of eczema. Now, Sheng Di Huang is one of those herbs. In English, it's known as Rehmannia root or Chinese foxglove root. Now, in Chinese medicine, it's a core herb for cooling heat that has reached the blood level, and for also replenishing fluids when inflammation has dried up the local area. Now, if Huang Qin is one of those sharper tools for clearing out damp heat, then Sheng Di Huang is often part of what prevents the system from getting scorched in the process. Now, a lot of eczema education stays on the surface layer, or the surface level, with moisturizers, triggers, and topical routines. Now, these of course are very important, but they don't fully explain why some people flare with a very specific signature red, hot, inflamed skin that bleeds easily when scratched, and they also feel very dry, tight, and reactive. Now, in Chinese medicine, that presentation often points to heat that has moved deeper into the blood level of the body and heat that has started to consume fluids. Now, you see, this is where Sheng Di Huang really stands out, because classically it's described as cold in nature, sweet, and slightly bitter in flavor, and it's associated with the heart, liver, and kidney channels. Now, in traditional language, this is very straightforward. It clears heat, it cools the blood, it nourishes yin, and it's going to help to generate fluids. What makes that useful in heat-type eczema is that it can cool inflammatory heat without stripping away the body's moisture reserves in the process. Now, when this herb truly fits, the eczema often looks and feels hot. The lesions tend to be red and warm to the touch, and they bleed easily when you scratch. Now, the itch can have burning qualities and flares often, and they're worse with heat, stress, and at night. Now, the skin can feel tight and dry, flaky, cracking, and have a sense that it just can't hold moisture, now even when the person is doing all the right things topically. Now, in the clinic setting, we look at the whole picture, including the person's digestion, their sleep, the temperature. Do they run hot? Are they cold? Are they thirsty? How does their tongue look and the pulse? Because what's happening on the skin is rarely the full story just by itself. So if we translate this into modern terms, atopic dermatitis is not just redness, it's immune oversignaling, itch chemistry, and a barrier dysfunction that keep feeding each other in this loop over and over. Now, during a flare, immune messengers ramp up histamine and other mediators that can rise, and the barrier becomes permeable. Now, that makes it easier for irritants to get in and moisture to escape, and which keeps the immune system re-triggered. Now, there is a study that's often cited in discussions around Rehmannia root that helps connect to this idea. In an animal study with atopic dermatitis, topical Rehmannia extract reduced visible dermatitis severity as well as the ear thickness. It also decreased inflammatory cell infiltration in the skin and lowered serum histamine. It also reduced expression of inflammatory cytokines and suppressed chemokines, which are involved in pulling inflammatory activity into the skin. Now, this doesn't prove that it treats human eczema on its own, but it does make sense of why an herb classically used to cool the blood heat can calm inflammatory agitation and might show measurable effects on inflammatory signaling and itch chemistry in a skin inflammation model. So if you look up Sheng Di Huang research, you will also keep seeing one compound that's mentioned. It's called catapole. Now, catapole is an iridoid glycoside. It's found in Rehmannia, and it's been studied for anti-inflammatory effects in multiple experimental settings. Now, a simple way to understand the interest is that catapole appears to dampen major inflammation pathways and reduce the expression of inflammatory mediators in certain models. Now, that doesn't mean that catapole is the answer or that isolating one compound will replicate what a whole herb or a whole formula is doing. It simply provides a modern vocabulary for traditional observation. Sheng Di Huang has a cooling and settling quality that often becomes very relevant when presentation is hot, active, and drying. So let's take a minute to be clear about something. So reading about an herb online is not the same as being guided in how it should be used. Now, Sheng Di Huang is cold and moistening, which can be exactly what somebody needs, but it can also feel very heavy on the digestion in the wrong person. Now, herbs can interact with medications. Correct dosing is important, and quality control matters, of course. Now, most importantly, Chinese medicine rarely relies on a single herb. It relies on matching the person's pattern and then building a formula that balances direction, temperature, and tolerability. That is usually where people go wrong when they try to copy what they read in forums or see on social media. So this is also why the Chinese medicine approach can be so beneficial for eczema, because instead of chasing the newest supplements or reacting to symptoms week by week, it gives you a way to organize the problem into patterns and treat the underlying drivers that keep the skin stuck in the same loop. It also allows treatment to change as the presentation changes, which matters because eczema rarely stays in one phase forever. So the main takeaway here is that Sheng Di Huang often functions as the fluid protecting side of the heat clearing strategy. Now, if Huang Qin can help clear heat and damp heat more aggressively, Sheng Di Huang is commonly part of what keeps the cooling approach from leaving the system too dry afterwards. Traditionally, it cools blood heat and generates fluids, and in research models, Rehmannia extracts have shown the ability to reduce dermatitis severity and inflammation signaling, including histamines and key cytokines and chemokines involved in atopic inflammation. Now, it's not about chasing an herb trend, it's about using a coherent strategy where the traditional language of patterns, pattern differentiation, gives a roadmap, and modern research helps explain why the roadmap works.